right, welcome back everyone for another episode of Dollar Bin Digging. This is the video and article that I do for comicbookinvest.com where I talk about those books you can still probably find tucked away in those cheap boxes, those discount bins, those dollar boxes at your LCS, half-price books, yard sales, flea markets, wherever you're doing your cheap comic book hunting. These are some titles I think you might be able to scoop out of there based off of some of the recent news, rumors, announcements, and things going on in the actual comics. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see this week's selection of books, just hang up for a few seconds after the intro and I will be right back. All right, so we'll start it off right in with the comics. So these are going to be some new release comics that I read through this week that I saw some interesting characters reappear, pop up, etc. that I think you can go and dig out their first appearances or related titles, because it's not always about first appearances. Sometimes it's related to storylines and things that actually are going on in these books as we're reading them on a weekly basis. So with that said, we are going to start off with a new #1 over at Marvel, and this is a new Spider-Verse title, Web of Spider-Verse New Blood. Now, a couple of the characters are brand spanking new. Count Parker, I believe right there in the middle, would be considered this is his first appearance. And then that Prowler Spider-Man as well, I think that's being played by Miles Morales, is down below. Again, is a first appearance in this title. But also, not only on that cover, but inside the guts of this book, we do see a familiar spider-smashing Hulk. So, Spider-Hulk reappearing again in this Web of Spider-Verse title. This is a character that's been around for a while. This is an idea that's, not brand new. So, Spider-Hulk goes back a little bit of a ways, goes back to September of 1990, right here on the cover, inside the guts of this book, Web of Spider-Man number 70. And this is the book. Again, you can see right there the title, right there on the cover, but also inside in the storyline, you'll see it here as well. And he does repeat that Spider Smash, tagline. So, with that said, this is a book that's kind of popped up here and there, especially when we had there was like a recent title that also brought back the Spider Hulk, I think a year or two ago. So that one caused a little bit of a stir for the back issues on this one. But it's an old web title that you might be able to go and dig out of a box. A lot of people might scoop it out ahead of you because it does have the Spider Hulk right there in the cover, but still, it's good to know the book, and it's good to keep an eye on it in case you're flipping through the box. Who knows what you might come across. But yes, this one can sell for 10 to 15 bucks, as you can see with some recent sales and asking prices in that similar kind of range, in that 15 to 20 kind of, ballpark. So it is a book that could get you a few extra bucks if you can find it in a cheap box. I just thought it was a fun little throwback and a book to tell you to keep an eye out for when you're digging, this upcoming weekend. So keep that one in mind. We're going to stick with Marvel, and we're going to go to another title that came out this week, and that is the latest issue of Storm. So with Storm number 6, things are heating up and moving on as we see what's going on with the Earth's Mightiest Mutant Storm. But also in this book, we get a callback to a character I feel like I haven't seen him in an age at this point. And that's this guy right here. As we get early on in the book, we see Maggot. Yeah, unfortunate name. It is an unfortunate name. And it's a weird power that he's got these weird little creatures that will basically devour anything. I don't know. Strange character, but he's a character who's also been around for a while, and it's kind of fun to see him back. Granted, his appearance is kind of tweaked. He no longer appears blue as he did in his original days. He now looks more humanoid, humanesque, with his Australian background there. But the original Maggot did appear way back when Joe Mad was doing the art on Uncanny X-Men, and this was in Uncanny X-Men 345. And once again, a cover appearance for their first appearance, making it easy. And there's not this debate or question about, well, what's the first cameo, all that. It's all right here. It's on the cover, in the guts of the book, right away. No mistaking it. That's what we're talking about here. And this book, again, you can see Maggot there in that classic kind of a manga vibe that Joe Mad is known for. I like it. I like his style. I've always liked his style. So this was an era I did enjoy for the Uncanny X-Men. But this book, again, Not an expensive one. You can probably find his first appearance for cheap, copy selling for like $3-4. I mean, it's really not an expensive book. Yeah, some copies listed could be closer to 10, but once again, it's a fun first appearance that you can go and dig out. Who knows if we'll see more of this mutant going forward? We still have no idea what sort of lineup we're going to get once the mutants do come to the MCU. Now, I'm not trying to suggest Maggot's going to be part of the Marvel movie universe or anything like that. I'm just pointing out the fact that we don't know anything yet. And when it comes to like Easter eggs and background characters, things like that, who knows who might get a little shout out, especially with movies coming our way eventually and the current, well, I should say current because we're getting the second season, X-Men 97 cartoon. That's probably a better place for us to see a character like Maggot just kind of pop up here or there in the background, maybe even get a little feature in a story. Who knows? Who knows? Point being, fun first, cheap first, something to look for when you're out there digging in those boxes. Now, continuing on, this will be my last Marvel title for this week, but it's Wolverine #7, which in its solicitation mentioned like an important character appearance, which I felt was misleading. I thought it meant we are going to get a brand new character first appearance, but it wasn't. I read the book, and it's a callback to a character who's been around a while, and realistically, he actually showed up at the end of last issue. So at the back end of issue 6, we saw Romulus, so this shouldn't be a surprise now. But again, I know the solicitations come out months ahead, so they didn't want to spoil it. But at the end of issue 6, we do see that Romulus here is kind of, turning the machinations. He's kind of in charge of all of these gold-laced villains of Wolverine. Point being, Romulus as a character, it's complicated. Let's just say that there's a lot of books. They slow played this like you wouldn't believe. So I'm gonna do my best. I know I probably missed a bunch of stuff in between because there's a lot of cameos and hints and all that stuff. But let's just kind of get into the baseline of it all. So Romulus. Character itself, and I'm not even going to try to make sense of this. There's this whole thing way back in the old Wolverine books where T'Challa, when Wolverine was visiting Black Panther, kind of speculated that not all humans evolved from apes. Some, like Wolverine, might have evolved from more of the wolves, and there was a whole separate evolutionary thing. It was a weird story, and Romulus being the genesis of all of these, feral, wolf-like type characters throughout the Marvel universe, all could be traced back to him. I don't know, crazy story. I mean, it's comics. I mean, you got these big ideas, these storytellers just telling these huge stories, and yeah, some of it could be kind of silly, some of it kind of cool. Point being, hard to really nail down and explain to somebody who doesn't know comics, but I'm trying to do my best. Now, with that said, let's go back to the beginning. First time we get any sense of this character is in that Wolverine Origins series. A couple of covers here on this title from issue 2. This is from May of 2006. The American flag one is the regular cover. There's a Canadian flag variant that goes for a bit of money if you can find it. There's also a B cover, which we'll see here when I show you the sales figures. But inside this book, we get the first voice appearance of Romulus. We don't see him, but we hear him talking on the phone. That's who it is. So we get him, again, slow play, teased. So it is what it is. I'm not calling this anything more than it is. It's the character's voice. We don't have a name. We have nothing. We just know this is somebody who's behind these events going to go for a long time throughout this title. Because again, this is issue 2, mind you. Issue 2. Book sells for, not that much. It was a decent print run at the time. It was a popular Wolverine spinoff, as it was, was excitement around the character of Wolverine at the time in the early 2000s with the movies, out of Fox, etc. So you can see there with that other B cover that has Nuke right there on there and him having the flag on his face. But yeah, like $5-6 copies, $7, $14 listed. Not a pricey book. I mean, it doesn't sell all that often at those higher prices, but yeah, some people could ask for them. But it is a book that you can find out there. Point being, cool cover, and it's the voice of Romulus. Now, Few issues later, we'll jump ahead to issue 5 of this same title, Wolverine Origins. I always like this cover, just a cool look. There's a black and white version of this one as well, and another variant too for this issue 5 that came out in August of that same year. And in here, we do sort of get a shadowy, yeah, you don't see him, but we do see like shadowy callbacks to him as being a character in the background throughout Wolverine's history here and there. So we start seeing it almost like retconned in this character kind of appearing and being the guy behind the guy behind the guy. Also in this book, we do get an appearance of his son, Wolverine's son, Daken, however we say his name, as a baby. So the whole baby reveal started here. This is issue 5. Now, this book, again, even with this really cool cover, also doesn't go for all that much. We're talking, $5, $7. You can see there's a Emma Frost on the other cover, the B cover for this title. Copies listed for around $3, $4. And you can also see the black and white listed there. Not a pricey book. But again, know what you're getting. Unnamed, shadowy figure, just kind of still there in the background of things. Now, this was what, 2005, 2006? I think that's what we're talking about. We're still not there yet. Let's move on. The regular Wolverine title, April 2007. So a year later, here we've got Jeff Loeb and Simone Bianchi kind of telling this story here as we're getting right past the anniversary of Wolverine 50. So like right past that, we're getting more story around this character, and we finally get a name in this one. So in this, we get callbacks to the ancient Roman times where apparently Romulus was there. I think it's a gladiator of some sort. But there we get the name being chanted amongst the crowd. Romulus, Romulus, Romulus. So now my man finally has a name, though we don't really get a good look at him or anything like that in this book either. And it's all kind of flashback, callback, whatever you want to call it, historical references. This book, issue 53, can go for as cheap as like $2.75 or up to like $8. Cool. Copies listed, $3 to $9. It's not a pricey book. And you can see there is also a black and white version of this same book for whatever reason. They just had a black and white variant. So you can see even below, there's a pair together for only $9. So you can get both copies. It is what it is. Now, that's issue 53. We move on amongst that storyline and in that story. And this is also the story where Wolverine is going to take care of Sabretooth for a while. But here we go. This is issue 55 from July of 2007. And this is the book that has that EC horror homage cover with Wolverine holding Sabretooth's head. That is an incentive, a ratio incentive. So, obviously keep an eye out for it. But this is the regular cover, which you got to admit is a pretty cool cover on its own. I kind of like it. But inside this story, some people point to this as being the first appearance of Romulus because kind of in story and in continuity, not flashback or callback or throwback, whatever you want to call it, he is there. We still don't see him, but that is him standing behind Logan. That's Romulus. But it is what it is. Still call it a cameo, call it a shadowy appearance, whatever. I'm just pointing out that it's him and he's there. This book, again, in its regular form, the cover A, it's only, and there's a black and white version of it as well, because they did black and white versions of this storyline, which helps with the art. The art was fantastic, and it does work for black and white as well as in color. But again, $3 to $4, not pricey. Copies listed, it's like $3. And then I showed you there for context. That's the EC horror homage that you probably know pretty well. That thing could be like 25 to 40, depending on condition, etc. Plus, it's a fun callback to that EC horror day. So, what was it? Crime Suspense Stories 22. Anyway, cool. Keep an eye out for it. But the regular cover on its own is pretty fun. And again, we got what we got as an appearance. We're not done. This was, 2007? We're still rolling on here with more secrety, shadowy appearance and going back to Wolverine Origins. This is issue 26. We've already seen his son reappear and get introduced throughout the story since issue 10. So there is Daken, however we say his name, right there on this cover, June of 2008. So a whole year later, and we're still slow playing this thing because, yes, we're still getting more shadowy background appearances. We don't really get a good look at this guy, but here he is still in the background, kind of working the puppet strings, if you will. This book, another one. I couldn't even find any individual sales. It sold in some lots for like a few bucks, but I didn't feel like putting the lots in there. I couldn't find any individual sales of this title on its own. Again, I'm not saying that this is a key in any way. I'm just pointing out that it's one of many kind of quick shadowed appearances that we've gotten over these years. And copies listed for $3 to $9. It is a pretty cool cover. And yeah, so I just kind of pointed it out. But finally, after all of that, we're sticking with Origins. Granted, we got to go over a dozen issues later, but here we are with issue 39, Facing Omega Red. And this is August 2009 at this point. Years later, years after those appearances. This is issue 39 of Wolverine Origins. We started this with issue 2. Now we're at issue 39. And finally, we got to look at this guy that's not shadowed. There he is, and he's a huge, beastly man. He's a big guy. He's not like a little runt like Logan. So there we go, big guy, extra claw coming out of his thumb area. Why it didn't come out like all of the other claws came out between the knuckles? I don't know why the thumb one didn't come out between like the forefinger and that knuckle, but hey, it is what it is. There's Romulus, finally, after all this time. And this is a book that is still not that expensive. I think it's just because there's so many appearances. It took for years to get here. It still doesn't, really draw that much, but copies still sell for around $5. Copies listed for about $5, unless you can find a newsie. People do like paying extra for these newsstands, especially in this weird time frame of like 2008, 2009, and even later. But a newsstand, you can see somebody's asking $40 for it because, again, they are pretty tough. I'm not going to say they're not tough to find newsstands in this era, but I still personally don't subscribe to paying huge premiums for newsstand copies. I mean, I get it. Less copies, harder to find, all of that. But to me, I don't care all that much. Personally, it's just not, I just want the book. Like, I want to read the actual story, and I like the comics themselves. I get that there are rarer versions of things, and like, but it's not for me. It's not for me. I get it. I'm not going to judge anybody for buying pence copies, Canadian price variants, Australian price variants, whatever it might be. We have a lot of different ways to collect. I'm not going to judge anybody how they collect. I'm just saying, for me, doesn't matter. I'm good either way. But with all that said, that's our Marvel stuff. So before I move on, I want to remind all of you out there who haven't tried Whatnot yet, please use my link below. Get yourselves a free $15 on your first purchase to spend on whatever you want with whomever you want. No strings attached. You don't have to spend it with me. You can spend it with anybody you like. $15 to sign up and try the application. I did a sale last week. I'll probably be going back on there in the next week or so once I got some time to put some more books together and have some fun. Because it is fun to do with these shows. I will admit that. It takes a lot of time and effort to do one, to get ready, and then all the shipping afterwards could be time consuming, which is why I don't do it often, because I'm not a seller. I'm just a collector, but I do have fun hanging out and talking about comics. I do need to clear some space. My wife wants some more space back in our house, so I do have to get rid of some books. So with that said, keep an eye out. I'll let you know more if I do a sale, but for anybody out there, just get yourself some free money if you haven't tried it already. Now, with that said, let's get over to DC. DC this week. Well, I haven't been reading Poison Ivy. These have been more of, I can appreciate the awesome covers that this entire run has had from the beginning. I haven't really been reading it because I'm not really a big Poison Ivy guy. I've come to appreciate the character more watching the Harley Quinn cartoon, which I'm still behind on. I'm not up to date, but watching the Harley cartoon on HBO Max, the more adult one, it's fun, and I can appreciate the character there. But I'm not reading her individual title. I'll dip in here and there, just kind of check things out, like this book. So, issue 31. Issue 31, we're seeing the return of a character who has appeared in this run earlier. So, we're going to see this callback. She doesn't have a huge rogues gallery because she was a rogue herself. So, she didn't have a lot of villains that are plant themed that we can really put up against her. So, they did create a new one earlier in the run, and that's this guy right here. This is what's his name? Peter Undine, or Mr. Undine, I believe. He's got a flower face. He's got a face that's a flower, basically. It's not quite like Last of Us, where they're like plant head or a demigorgon in that way, but his face is kind of a flower, and not Mr. Bloom over in Batman. Like, you can see it. It looks like again, I'm not a florist, so I don't know what type of flower it is, but he's got a flower face. Point being, He's been around since issue 14, I think, of this run. So it goes back a couple years, September 2023. He's right there on the cover. And again, that's a really nice cover art. I mean, I said it. And this is the cover A. There are B variants, etc. Throughout the run. I think there's a David Nakayama cover on this one as well. But right at the end of this book, even though he's right on the cover, we do get introduced to him right here with that blue flower face. Like there were some murders going on earlier in the story, and then they had like flowers on their heads. It is what it is. Give it a read if you want to go check out Mr. Undyne here. Is this book? It's not expensive. First appearance for a villain. Who knows what kind of profile he'll have in the future? If he'll cross over and be like a Batman, a villain here or there. Who knows? But $3, $6. It's like cover price or less. That's really what we're talking about here. You can look at the available copies as well. You can see there is a trade dress version of this. There is a UV glow-in-the-dark version. That's kind of like a virgin glow-in-the-dark version of this out there as well. And like I mentioned, there's a David Nakayama. There's a Rose Besh. There's a few covers for this one. So whatever one you can find, they're all, like I said, cover price or less. Who knows what'll happen with Mr. Undyne here. Now, that was Poison Ivy. Another title over on the DC side of things that I read this week, which I'll admit I did not really enjoy as much as I had hoped, because Secret Six had a new issue with a new team. As you can see them right there on the cover. A couple of old characters from the original squad, but a new team by and large for this title. Didn't love it. But with that said, let's go back. Secret Six as a team and a team name goes way back to 1968. No real relation between that squad and this one. But you can find this book out there. This actually, I saw copies, lower grades for like, $15, $20, which I was kind of surprised by. Higher grades could be closer in that like $60, $70 kind of range. And then, of course, you got graded, etc. But not telling you're going to find this book out there. I'm just telling you that's how far back the team name of the Secret Six goes, because the one that is near and dear to my heart was introduced during Villains United back during that DC event in 2005. So Villains United, where all the bad guys got together inside this title in this miniseries. This was issue 1 of 6. We also were introduced to the new Secret Six here, the team that was brought together in this title. We had, Deadshot, Catman. You had what was her name? Cheshire. You had the Parademon, Ragdoll, who I was a big fan of, and what's her name? Can't think of it. I'm blanking on the girl with the dark hair. Point being, I really like this squad, and I really like this title. And then eventually we got characters like Bane popping in, etc., that joined up down the line. Some characters swapped in here and there. Point being, this book, very cheap. It was an event at the time, so there are copies out there that you can go and dig. There's also 3 printings of this. As you can see, copies here selling for like $2.50 to $4. Copies listed for like $3.50. This is a dollar bid book all day. You could find this out there. You can, if you can really, squint your eyes and zoom in. That $2.50 sale is actually the 3rd print of this title, and it actually has the Secret Six characters replacing, these guys here. So it's a very similar setup, but with the Secret Six characters, which is kind of fun. And then there was also a 2nd print in between that had a whole different cover. But that was their first appearance of the team that I loved and I enjoyed reading. That said, they got their own mini the year after. So that's something else you can keep an eye out. So from the pages of Villain United. Yeah. Scandal. That was her name. For whatever reason, popped in my head. Scandal. That was her name. But May of 2006. This was a 6-issue miniseries. So you can see here how an individual copy of issue 1 sold for all of 69 cents. While the entire 6-issue run sold for $8.24. Once again, dollar bin stuff, but worth $1, worth a read. I'm telling you, this was some good stuff. Gail Simone, I liked what you did here with this team. So copies listed, you can see there. Also around $8, all 6 of them. You can have them for cheap, even online. Following this mini-series, there was another ongoing series that started after. Again, just as good. I did enjoy that one as well. That's where we got Bane kind of jumping in and kind of mixing it up with the team there. But that Secret Six is completely different than this current Secret Six. As you saw on the cover, Catman and Deadshot will be part of this new team, but they don't show up to the end of that issue. Most of the issue is building the rest of them, starting off with Dreamer here. So didn't really start here. I mean, you had Jonathan Kent doing his thing, but Dreamer showing up on Jay and John's door, saying we got things we got to go to take care of. So Dreamer shows up here to start the beginnings of this team, even though she has some issues there with Gossamer because of his entire. You got to read the backstory. It goes back to the Amanda Waller stuff and you know all that. So absolute power. Not going to get into that. Don't want to get lost in the weeds there. I'm just trying to stick with this book and this character of Dreamer. First appearance. A lot of places will say it is this, and I've even said it before, without doing too much digging, in this DC Pride 2022 edition. And yes, she does appear here. I mean, I believe she showed up on the Supergirl TV show first, but here in this book, it's kind of in the forward. You don't really get a story of her, but yeah, there's some panels and the character from the TV show. So yeah, it is her first, but just know you're not getting a story of this character. It's just her appearing in this, Pride book from 2022. And that book's also not cheap. It came with like an $8 cover price, I believe. So that's where around the prices are, right around that $8 mark. So still around cover price. So, I mean, you might find it in a cheap box somewhere. Sure, have at it. There's also multiple covers if you're interested, including incentives, but not going to get into all that. Because realistically, if you want her appearance in a story, it only happened a month later. And that was right here in Superman, Son of Kal-El, in the John Kent book, issue 13. And she's right there on the cover, the dynamic debut of Dreamer. So I would lean towards it. Personally, I would like this book more because, again, the other book, yes, it came first and she appeared in it. But do I want to pay more for that? Not especially. So if I had a few bucks and I was going to go buy a book, I'd probably buy this one because you can have this one for cheap. It's only, well, yes, copies sold for $7, but copies are really right around cover price and maybe a little bit more, $4 to $7. It's not a huge, a huge deal or anything, but something I would park. If I get this for undercover price, I just stick in a box and see what happens. Who knows down the line what will happen with this character because maybe they break out. I don't know. That said, it's not just Dreamer here. We also get Gossamer, and there's also John Kent Superman. But Gossamer in his costume, yeah, he showed up earlier in the book from this panel, but I kind of like this panel because he's wearing his gear, and you see his his getup because the character was like Jay Nakamura, I believe, is what he mostly goes by, and he's usually just in his civvies. He's got pink hair, whatever. But his superhero moniker is Gossamer, not to be confused with this guy from Looney Tunes, because every time I read it, I think of this guy from Looney Tunes because that is one of those weird trivia things when people ask, so what's the name of that big orange guy that Bugs Bunny would comb his hair and he would chase him around? His name was Gossamer. So anyway, not that Gossamer. This Gossamer. He first showed up in that same Superman, Son of Kal-El run that John Kent had, but it only way back in issue 2. So the second issue from August of 2021 is where we get introduced to the future love interest of John Kent here. But here, this is where we find him meeting, and Kent's got his blonde wig on, and point being, this is where they get introduced, and character and their relationship grows from there. This book also very, very cheap. You can find these things out there, like right around cover price. $4 copies are sold for. Copies listed in that $3 to $5 range. There are other covers. I just went with the cover A, but there are other cover options as well. All right, but anyway, moving on from there. The next character that kind of shows up in the midst of this storyline and titles the character they're trying to break out of this underground prison in this storyline. I think it's one of Waller's lockdown places, but the character trying to break out here is Black Alice, who goes all the way back to those Birds of Prey days. So here we go. Getting into the character of Black Alice. Her first, actually, it had a moment, it had a day where it was like a $15, $20 book at one time that you would want to go and hunt and dig out of a box. Maybe even more than that. I'm just trying to remember by and large. It was a pricey little book that you can find, and that was Birds of Prey number 76 back in 2004. And again, right inside the story, the guts of this book, we're introduced to her, pretty much straight off. So that's her right there. Anyway, Black Alice, first appearance. But today, this is a very cheap book, even online. You see copies are only selling for $2, $4, $8 at the most. Copies listed for $3 to $5. Like I said, this was much pricier back in the day. So I guess her profile kind of came down. Maybe it'll rise back up now that she's part of this new team. Maybe it takes off. I don't know. But this is a fun first for you to go and dig out, because there really aren't a lot of books for you to go and dig for when you're in Birds of Prey. Like during that run, there's a couple cool covers you can go and dig out of there. But realistically, not a lot of firsts or keys that you're going to find when you're digging through Birds of Prey. So if you find a Birds of Prey stack, this is one to look for. Now, with that said, also want to remind any of you out there, you need some supplies. Go check out BCW. Use my code RENA10 to get yourself 10% off your entire order. Get yourself your bags, your boards, your long boxes, your short boxes, CGC boxes, top loaders, pages for cards, whatever you need to keep your comics and collectibles safe. You might as well save some money while you make those orders and save yourself 10% by using my code RENA10. You can use the link I got down below, but just definitely remember that code and save yourself some money when you're buying those supplies, because why not save a few bucks if you can? RENA10, 10% off your whole order. Now, to wrap us up for today, let's get on over to the rumor part of the show. I didn't want to call it news because, again, this is rumor, but it did come from a news story that I did read over on comicbookmovie.com that kind of connected on. But it's a little rumor about Ironheart. Yes, we apparently are still getting this Ironheart Disney Plus series at some point. We saw a trailer. We see the Hood's going to be in there. And that's what we're going to talk about here, is because, yeah, there's some, they had some like concept art. I'm not going to share that because it's very unclear of what they're trying to draw in from that. The point being, a lot of people have assumed this is where we will see Mephisto, and Mephisto being played by Sacha Baron Cohen. But this article does raise the question of, what if that's not the case? Because realistically, the Hood doesn't have connections to Mephisto. If you read the stories and read the books, you would assume he would, because, Mephisto is kind of the Marvel Universe's devil, etc. But that's not who made the deal. The actual source behind the Hood's power was Dormammu, from Doctor Strange. We've already met this character, Benedict Cumberbatch, all CGI'd up, also played Dormammu in that first one. But perhaps they're just recasting him now to do a human form version of him. Who knows? But the point being, Dormammu as a character goes, again, way back. You're not going to find this in a dollar bin. So August 1964, yeah. Not going to find that there. So we're not talking first appearances. Why else am I going to talk about this book? Because, again, I want to tell you about the history of the character of the Hood. And while the Hood originally appeared in his own mini, that was his first appearance, it wasn't until this new Avengers run where we had Secret Invasion and the Hood was kind of getting all these underworld character types all together, kind of building a little army of his own, that we finally found out who was behind the source of his power. And in the story here, in issue, was that 46, it's Dormammu, not Mephisto, who's the source of the Hood's power. So maybe that comes into play. And maybe that's who Sacha Baron Cohen is actually going to be playing in the movie, in the TV show, I'm saying, and in the MCU going forward. I don't know. They might switch it up. They might change it. But this is the rumor that got me thinking about it and got me back to the comics and why I'm talking about this book. And again, this book is not expensive. Again, it's just a reveal of the power behind the Hood. So take that for what it is. It's more just backstory, a book for you to read. You like to collect, you like to have part of the story, you like to have the issues that are important in telling these tales. This is one you might want to look for cheap. Because again, it only sells for $2 to $4. Copies listed are $2 to $4. Definitely not a pricey book. One you can find out there. And give it a read. You might actually enjoy it. With that all said, that's all I got for you this week. Hopefully you found that helpful. Hopefully I told you about some interesting books for you to go and dig for in those boxes. Yes, some might make you a few bucks. Some might just give you some light reading for the weekend and give you some background info on some of these characters that we're reading about in the books coming out each week. With that said, I'd like to thank you again for all the support, and I will be back soon with some more content. All right, later.